This video is going to be very similar to 3.2, except we're starting with the opposite pieces. So in 3.2, we started that if we knew that the lines were parallel, then the angles would be congruent or supplementary. In this case, we're starting first with the fact that we know that certain types of angles are congruent, and then therefore that tells us then that the lines are parallel. So it's starting with the opposite piece, and these are called converse statements because they're going the opposite order. So the first one is corresponding angles. So if we have two corresponding angles, angle 2 and 6, that are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So in the solving aspect of it, it really will be very similar because it says you want to find the value of x that makes it parallel. So the only way that it'll be parallel is if these two pieces, these two angles, the corresponding angles are congruent. Or we can set the measures equal to each other. So the setup will be the same. So in our equation, 3x plus 5 equals 65, then we can subtract the 5 over, so we end up with a 3x equals 60, and then we can divide, sorry, my pen is not working very well, we can divide by 3 and get a 20. So just like corresponding, we have our alternate interior angles, we have our alternate exterior angles, and we have our consecutive interior angles. So since it's the converse, this means we start with the fact that we know that they're parallel, or that the two angles are congruent to each other, so then we know that J is parallel to K. The alternate exterior angles converse, it means we start with alternate exterior angles are congruent to each other, and then it tells us that the J is parallel to line K. In consecutive interior angles, we know that they are supplementary. So if we have consecutive interior angles that are supplementary to begin with, and that's all we know, then that proves that J is parallel to line K. In this question with the snake patterns, you can see that this is just a blown up image of it. And in the picture, there are two congruent angles that are formed by these different lines. If you look at the picture, the different sides of the shape of the diamond. So the way that we can tell that they are that the two sides are parallel is because these two angles, if you look at the ones that are congruent, that those are alternate interior angles, and if we know that alternate interior angles are congruent, then that tells us that we have two lines that are parallel. So now I would like you to try the next three questions and see, do you have enough information to explain and prove that line A is parallel to line B? And you have to look at what you start with and what type of angles are they, and then how do they need to be set up? Do they need to be congruent or supplementary then to prove that the two lines are parallel? So push pause, work them out, and then push play when you're ready to check your answer. All right, so your answer should be yes for the first one, yes for the second one, and no for the third one. So for the first one, the two angles are alternate exterior angles, and they are congruent. So if we have alternate exterior angles that are congruent, then yes, we can say that the two lines are parallel. For your second picture, we have a pair of corresponding angles that are congruent. So that is your reason why, because if corresponding angles are congruent, then we know that the lines A and B will be parallel. All right, for this last one, the reason that it is a no is because we have alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles need to be congruent for the two lines to be parallel. And when they're saying angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180, that would be if the one was on this other side of the little corner right here on the other side of that transversal line. Then the consecutive interior angles, if those add up to be 180 degrees, then they are parallel. But these are alternate interior angles instead. In this last one, we have transitive property of parallel lines. So transitive property you're going to learn later is if one thing is equal to another, and that one thing is then equal to another one, then we can match up the first and last. So if I am friends with my friend Allison and she is friends with my friend Leah, then I am also friends with Leah. So with parallel lines, how this shows up is if the first one, if two lines are parallel to each other, so if P is parallel to Q and Q is parallel to R, then that means that all of them are parallel to each other. So for the practice question, we're looking at this picture and it says that each step is parallel to the step immediately above it. The bottom step, so you can kind of see right here, this bottom step is parallel to the ground. And you want to explain why the top step then is also going to be parallel to the ground. And it's for the same reason with this transitive property. So if the first step is parallel to the ground, and then the next step above it is parallel to that first step, the next step is parallel to that previous step, and going all the way on, all the way up, then we can use the transitive property to say that this last one, the last step, then will also be parallel to the ground because they're all parallel to each other. The last two questions, I would like you to try to solve for x in the first one, and then be able to explain, do we have enough information then in the second one to say that line A is parallel to line B. So push pause, work them out, and then come back and check your answers. Alright, so in the first question, we should get x equals 15 as your final answer. The second one, you should get yes, that you do have enough information, and these are the reasons why. So in the first one, these two angles are consecutive interior angles, and we know that those are supplementary. And if those two angles are supplementary, then we know that the two lines are going to be parallel to each other. So if we add the two consecutive interior angles together and equal 180, there's our equation. And then when you solve for x, you should combine your 150 and minus 15 together first to get 135. Then when you subtract 135 from both sides, you get a 45. And lastly, we need to divide then by 3, so we get x equals 15. In the second one, the reason I said yes is we have this 114, and if you see this angle right here, the two of these together, those would be considered alternate exterior angles. So you need to combine the two angles they give you. 66 plus 48 is 114. And once you see that the two angles are congruent, the alternate exterior angles are congruent, we know that that is enough information then to prove that the two lines A and B that they go through, that those two angles are, or the two lines, sorry, are parallel. So we know that if we have alternate exterior angles that are congruent, then we know that the two lines A and B have to be parallel to each other, since now we can see that the 114 is the same as 114, and those are alternate exterior angles.